I think it's fair to say there was always going to be a considerable amount of pressure on Julian Lopetegui this season coming into this job. He's filling big boots or big shoes, whatever you want to call it, in terms of David Moyes. Look, not everyone's cup of tea, but he did well for West Ham. There's no denying that he did well. European football, 3 consecutive seasons and a trophy. It's hard, and there's an expectation to take us further. Then there's the added part of Moyes and his relationship with the media. He always seems to be very much favoured by the sort of big media players and pundits, etc. So I always had the anticipation that once this season got underway, if anything didn't start well, if it wasn't going quite right, that they would just be absolutely gunning for him, as if to sort of, we told, be careful what you wish for, we told you so, that kind of stuff going on. We're getting it now in full force. We're 5 games into a Premier League season, and already that's the big message. It's a big story already. I get it. Look, I understand why that's the case. We haven't started great, But like many said, and myself included at the beginning when we pointed Lopetegui, and I think it was fair point, is there was always going to have to be a period of patience with the side to settle down, the new head coach to settle down, his new team, etc., to get things clicking. It was always going to be a slow start, I think, for West Ham. It was very unlikely West Ham were going to hit the ground running and be bashing teams aside and be flying up the table. I always thought that was going to be unlikely. It was going to be a bit of a tough start. But that being said, it has been pretty poor. I mean, I'm not sitting here trying to suggest that it's been great and we've just been a little bit unlucky. I think a couple of things possibly been a little bit unlucky, but ultimately it has been pretty poor. Chelsea performance was sort of the worst, I think, case. And I think for me, like I said in the review of that game, it was the fact that we'd had a week to prepare. That's where my worry was the most, that we've had all this time to prepare for that game, and that's what we got. But I felt actually, although we conceded 5 then against Liverpool, I felt was an unfair reflection of that game. I thought West Ham actually played pretty well overall. I thought we looked far better, far more hungry, up for it, better organised. It was just a really, the way we capitulated at the end was pretty poor. Edson Alvarez being sent off didn't help. But look, I get it. I understand why there's pressure on Lopetegui, and that's where we are. We're in a position now where we've got a couple of games before the next international break, and he just has to get results now. Got to start seeing better performances. The kind of, the early days of the reign is kind of coming to an end now. I feel like you can't keep rolling that. But that being said, I still felt that there is patience needed, and I still think that is the case. I think it's going to be a little while yet until you see West Ham firing completely under Lopetegui. It's going to be quite a while. But that being said, you've got to see improvements. Now, if we go back to the early part of Lopetegui, let's be honest, he wasn't the preferred choice. We know that. It was never for the fans, and I don't think for the club either. Maybe not David Sullivan. I think David Sullivan was certainly his number one choice. I'm pretty sure that was the case. But I think Amorim was the kind of number one in terms of Tim Steidten, as we wanted. But West Ham weren't going to pay the compensation fee. Now, EXWH employees updated us on the situation, all right? That's why I'm doing this video. I don't like the fact I'm doing this video, to be honest. I hate the fact I've got to talk about a potential manager having to, being sacked or having to defend himself and all this kind of stuff. And having to defend him on it. I just don't like it. I don't like the fact we're having this conversation, 5 games into a season. It just feels wrong. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't feel right at the moment to be having it. But anyway, it is what it is, and we've got to kind of talk about, because that's what the update we have from X on the West Ham podcast. The reason I haven't done the Liverpool review, by the way, is because I was travelling back from Bognor, so hence why I'm back now. And I was hoping to do a bit more, something a bit more uplifting. But look, it's about Lopetegui. Let's just keep it about that. As I say, West Ham he wasn't the number one choice, I think, for many, but he got the job. The thing is with Lopetegui is that he was obviously went to Wolves, didn't work out there. He felt he was let down by the club. He left, but he stayed in England. He stayed in England. He wanted to manage the Premier League, and West Ham was his number one choice. He's really wanted this job. He's been holding off and waiting for this job. So I still think that there is a lot of promise there with him. I personally do. I really don't feel there's enough there to suggest that, he's just not working out, got to get rid. I really don't think that's the case. He's been fully backed by the club, hasn't he, this summer? Fully backed. So West Ham have put their hands in their pockets and really backed him and Steidten and wanting to push the club forward. So there's pressure there with that. But what it also shows is that they believe in the guy. That's why I struggle to believe that there is this kind of impending doom. You know what I mean? That the club are sort of sitting back going, I'm not sure. But that is the message that's coming from the club, by all accounts. You know, it feels like, you know, what's been filtered through to the media is a little bit like, we're not sure, we're not happy with the way things have started. I get it. I understand that they're probably not happy. Why would they be happy? I just don't think it's needed. I don't think the club don't need to be adding pressure to the situation regarding Lopetegui. I think he just needs to kind of get on with it, let him get on with his job and judge it later on. You know what I mean? I feel like he needs more time at this stage. I think it was Alex Ferguson said that. I mean, I always about it being a sort of, I think after 10 games, that's when you can make a call on the season and where things are going to shape up. I always thought it was 8 games. So being 5 in, you know, and being 14th, yeah, it's not ideal, but, you know, we're not miles off. A couple of wins, everything changes pretty quickly. But I do feel that's needed now. I feel like he needs to get a good performance in, a good result in, get some points on the board and lift the mood. We desperately need it because it feels like we're on that slippery slope and media are latching onto it and it's just not helping. It really isn't. As I say, the start of the season has been great. The Chelsea display was the worst. So the message we got the update from EXWHUEMPLOYEE was that the club are not impressed with the start of the season, not impressed with the performances, and they want to see an improvement. I mean, look, obviously that's the case. We kind of, well, I would expect that. I've absolutely no belief that the club would ever pull the trigger at this stage. I really don't. I think he's got at very least till Christmas. Because, as I said, the club have fully backed the guy. They've chosen this guy. Do you know what I mean? The hierarchy. They're not going to suddenly pull the trigger on the guy. They've just spent all this money and backing and brought him in. It won't happen. I'm really, really confident of that. But the fact that they're putting messages out shows there is a little bit of doubt, within the club. It's just not ideal, is it? It's just, this is not the start we wanted. Not the ideal start for a season, but also for Lopetegui. It's just really not where we want to be. And it adds to the pressure. And I get it. As I say, I get it. Look, you're a club that's showing ambition, the club that wants to be challenging and wants to be back in Europe. You know, at the end of the day, you've got to get the results, haven't you? So it's a results-based business, and we've got to start seeing it, and we've got to start seeing improvements on the pitch in terms of performances. The next couple of games are massive for Lopetegui, Brentford and Ipswich. They're games that we can win, both of them. Brentford are obviously a tough opponent, being away from home. All games in the Premier League are tough, but they're big now for Lopetegui. The fact that the club are having to send out messages suggests that. And I actually do feel, for Lopetegui in all of this, I've got to be honest, like, he wouldn't have envisioned this kind of start and this kind of pressure, I guess, from the media, etc. It's just not an ideal scenario to be in. I mean, I'm not overly surprised personally that it's been a slow start, as I said, but I just want to see it improve. I think that's what you want to see, isn't it? As West Ham fans, we want him to do well. Last thing we need is another managerial change, another situation where a lot of fans are calling for the manager to be sacked. We've just had that. We've just had that for a long time. We're now entering a new chapter of the club. The last thing we need is the first part of it. We're going down the same path again in wanting the manager to be sacked. But the pressure is on. There's no two ways about it. The message from the club is they've got to see an improvement. As I said, against Liverpool, I felt we saw that. I felt that it was a far better performance we've been used to under Lopetegui so far this season. It's a bit more balanced. We actually competed with Liverpool for a fair amount of that game. As I say, I thought the 5-1 scoreline was just a poor reflection in terms of actually how the game played out. It wasn't quite accurate, but nevertheless, we still conceded 5 goals. It's not great. Things need to be improved upon and quickly. And this game against Brentford this weekend's a big one. I've got the preview coming out of that tomorrow morning for that game and talk about more detail and team news, etc. But I think Lopetegui needs backing. And I've got to say as well, and I have talked about this previously, the players need to step up. I think Lopetegui is being let down here a fair bit by some of these players that should be better. Let's get that right. I mean, you've got the likes of Mohamed Kudus, Jared Bowen, Lucas Paqueta, Edson Alvarez, obviously poor again. Against Liverpool with his sending off. These things just aren't helping. These are big players that you need on your side. You need to be performing. That's just not, for me, helping the situation at all. But Lopetegui needs to get things right. He needs to start working out who his best team is. Defensively, we've not been good enough. I actually thought the early stage of the season we're looking pretty solid. The last couple of games we've looked terrible, and it needs sorting out fast. the pressure's on him. There's no two ways about it. I understand it. The message from the club is, though, that, as I've said from X, his update, that there's no immediate decision making to come in terms of his future. They're going to let him get on with it, but they're not happy. The club aren't happy. They want to see an improvement on the performances and fast. So that's pretty big, I think. I think that's pretty telling to come from the top already, from a manager that's new to the club. That's quite big. So this is a really important week for Lopetegui. He's got to get it right. He's got to get his tactics spot on, and he's got to get his team selection right. This is going to be a big period for him, because if we go into the next international break in a really bad position, if we pick up, say, a point the next 2 games, then he's going to find himself under extreme amount of pressure, which will mean then he's going to have to come back and get results immediately. There's just no getting away from it. So we need to ease this off quite quickly. So these are big games coming up for him. The club, as I say, have put out a message quite loud and clear on him. It's big time for him. I just really hope, for our sake, for everyone's sake, that he gets it spot on and we start climbing that table fast.